everybody. Welcome back to the In Transition podcast. I'm Corey Jenkins. I am here with my partner in crime and co-host, Lauren Ashley Miner. And joining us on this conversation will be a very good friend of mine, Meg McKeen. I met Meg, 2020, Meg?
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. We were in the world of 2020 virtual stuff. I believe we were in a networking event held by a women's organization, and we just kind of kept in contact ever since. I am super happy that Meg is joining us on the podcast, and I cannot wait to delve into the topic that she's going to be delving into and that she's going to be sharing with us today on the podcast. But here is just a little bit about Meg. Celebrating her 24th year in the industry, Meg McKeen founded Adjunct Advisors LLC in 2018 with the essential belief that the way we sell insurance is ripe for change. Throughout her career, working both as an underwriter and an agent within the insurance industry, Meg has held a seat at the table during thousands of insurance negotiations. Meg now holds space at the crossroads of personal and professional development for individuals and organizations as they grow their sales and leadership acumen through private coaching, consulting engagements, and the podcast that she hosts, Bound and Determined. Meg's contributions to the insurance industry have been recognized with her inclusion in Insurance Business America's Hot 100. That's a mouthful. And Elite Women for 2021. A graduate of Illinois Wesleyan University with roots in Chicago, Meg is currently a digital nomad in the midst of a thoughtful travel adventure. When she's not helping business professionals, you can find Meg putting the practice into yoga practice, searching for the best vegan bakery, or cheering on her favorite independent musicians. Everybody, please welcome Meg McKeen to the In Transition podcast. Hey, Meg.
Oh, hey there. Thanks for having me. Thank you both for having me.
I am so glad. I am so excited. You were like one of the ones that I really, really wanted to have on our podcast this season. And I'm so glad and so honored that you were gracious enough to accept. And just so excited.
It didn't require any internal negotiation on my part. It was a quick hell yeah. So
thank you. So just to kind of give you a little background of how we structure our podcast, we just have basically two questions. We have basically bookend questions. The first question is, what was the catalyst of the transition that you'll be sharing with us? And we just kind of let it flow where it flows. And then we ended up with, how is that transition? How are you still living in that transition? If you are living in that transition, and what's next on the horizon for you? So I'm just going to jump on in. What transition are you going to share with Lauren and I and our listeners today?
Oh, so I can't help myself. I just have to preface this by acknowledging, and a beautiful friend of mine and guest on my own podcast shared this with me very recently, that recognizing that we are all in a state of transition all the time. And those of us that think we aren't are just fooling ourselves. And I love that. I love that frame. And so while we're here to talk about specifically my transition from, I'll call it my motherhood transition, though I am not a mother today, it's really my discovery of my place in that motherhood role in myself, in society, in my family, etc. And so that's where we're going today, recognizing that transition is happening or has happened in conjunction with so many other transitions, personally and professionally.
Okay. Yeah. You can just I don't even know where to start. Maybe just jump on in. I'm just gonna give the floor to you and just see where we go.
Back in 1912. No, just I will set the stage. I don't know when this will go live. It's irrelevant because this is a timeless conversation, but this is actually National Fertility Awareness Week.
I did.
And so this is very timely. And also Mother's Day is coming up in May, which is a holiday that brings a lot of feelings for a lot of people, not always good and positive ones. And so because of my own experience and journey towards motherhood, I'm just keenly aware that motherhood looks and feels differently for so many people, and that family means different things to different people. So I want to add that first. But I grew up, much like many women I know, with a sort of baked in understanding that I would be a mother. Mm-hmm. Hearing phrases like, "You'll be such a good mom someday," mm-hmm. or "You're so maternal. You have such a good maternal instinct." And so I grew up thinking, playing with my dolls and babysitting when I got a little bit older, and always wanting to hold the cute little baby that was born in the neighborhood, and really leaning into and accepting that motherhood was part of my plan. And I met, he's my now ex-husband, but I met my husband when I was in my early 20s, and having children was always part of our plan. We did wait a little bit in order to give ourselves some time to acclimate to being married and partnered. But when we started trying, it didn't happen on our timeline. And we started to work with doctors and medical intervention, and really went down a path to make that dream, if you will, come true. And I won't bore you with all of those details, but I was very, very committed to it. I was very, very focused on it, to the detriment of my mental health and ultimately my relationship. We ended up getting divorced in that season of our marriage while we were still actively trying to get pregnant. And so what I didn't expect in my motherhood journey was that I would find myself in my very early 30s single again, which, I'll be candid, I was excited about. I really embraced that shift in my situation. I took the first year after my divorce and I didn't date. And I got to know myself again as a single woman. I really didn't know her. I had gotten married so young that I really used that time to focus on who I was and what I wanted that chapter to look like. And though, once I did start thinking about maybe dating again and partnering again, I turned to, they weren't apps at the time, they were websites, Match.com and eHarmony. This was like, I don't know, 2011 or 12 when this was going on. And so you fill out your profile and there's these questions, these very black and white. Do you want kids? Yes or no? Do you have kids? Yes or no? Are you open to someone who has and so you have to pick this box. And I remember there not really being a box for a woman who will likely struggle to get pregnant and isn't necessarily like gonna fall apart if she doesn't have children, but she's not open to it. But she also, because what I decided after all of the medical intervention that we had done, I didn't want to do that again. That I wasn't interested or willing in doing to my body what I did to it that time around. And so I was much more like, if it happens, it happens, but also mindful of like, who is my partner if this is going to happen? I don't want to have children theoretically just for the sake of checking, that box. I had really started to shift my thinking, and that experience with filling out that profile and answering these questions and going on some dates with men. And mind you, there's something that's happening in our early 30s where those who want children are very, very, very focused on having children because of our biology, right? We don't have unlimited fertility as women. We're forced to think about these things.
Start to hear the clock.
Yeah, exactly. And so I made a very conscious decision to take it off the table. And what would happen if I said, no, I do not want children? What would happen in terms of my relationships if I wasn't dating to find a partner to procreate with, and I was just dating to find a partner to love me and nurture me and build a life together? What would happen then? And that unraveling of that expectation and that sort of pre-programming that I had up to that point, and really settling into what could life look like without children, and not settling, but settling into, like, really making a conscious choice to not have children, changed my future dating relationships. It changed very much so my relationship with myself. It's why I'm able to do the things that I do today and the choices that I make and the risks that I take.
Sure.
Because I made a different choice. And so the transition isn't an obvious one from quit a job, started a company, though I've done that, was married, got divorced. I've done that. I've done a lot of transitioning. This one was it's been a lifetime. Very interestingly, to present tense, and I hope I'm not, cut me off if I'm getting too long-winded here. I'll be 45 this fall, and all signs are pointing towards perimenopause and signaling, right, for many women, the end of their fertility.
Mhm.
And I've always sort of had this thought in the back of my mind, will I feel differently when it's no longer an option? Will I feel differently when this is off the table and it's no longer within my control? And I have to tell you, like, I'm being naive and I'll listen to this 5 years from now and I'll regret saying it. I know I will, but I'm here for it. Like, I'm here for this next season of life and of womanhood. And I know it's going to be hard and it's going to be a struggle sometimes, but I am very rationally and thoughtfully closing that chapter on my fertility with a lot of like love for the process and the journey, and for others who make different choices on their journey. Like, I'm here for all of it, but
Mhm.
I'm really looking forward to what's to come. So I'm going to pause.
I don't, there's so many different ways we could go with this one.
I know. I was like,
Oh my,
hashtag intentional singularity in there.
yeah.
Years spent getting to know herself again. Because I'm in
Yeah,
that zone too, just coming off a
you,
marriage
you,
ending. And
you,
hey, I'm like, people, their automatic first question is like, oh, are you dating now? I was like, I just got out of a 11-year marriage.
whole marriage.
I want a
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah. I need to be.
Yeah,
And me,
give me a minute.
you've literally, like, the stuff that you just said were things that Lauren and I literally, either Lauren or myself, shared in our own podcast episodes. Lauren with her transitioning out of her 11-year marriage, and just like, I need a breath, I need to breathe. And me making a conscious decision in this season of my life to be intentionally single. And then also I'm in the same boat as you in terms of I'm I will be, by the time this episode airs, I will be 48. So I will be 48 next Tuesday. And it's like, I am very much into perimenopause. And it's like, okay, I know I'm never going to have a child. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I like the rich auntie vibes that my nieces let me have.
Same. And it's not the same. And that's one of the, I have one brother, he's older, he's raising my niece and nephew who are 9 and 11. And of course, the most perfect, beautiful, smart. I mean, they're the best. They really are. And
not biased at all.
I'm 100% biased, but it's not the same kind of love, right? Than if I was parenting them, and the love that my parents, their grandparents have for them is different than the love that they had for my brother and I when we were kids. It's not an either or. One of the things that my brother and I have talked about over the years, because what's fun about my nomad lifestyle is that he's very rooted and very grounded in the Chicago suburbs with the puppy and the kids and the dog or the yard and all of that I no longer have in my life. And so he'll call and say, like, where are you right now? What are you doing? Because our lives are so very different. He has expressed to me that he didn't know the kind of love that was possible until he became a dad. And I'll never experience that, right? I'll never know what that feels like or what that connection looks like. I wouldn't try to say that like my independence is equal to that. It's not. But I don't have a longing for it. And I think that's the differentiator, and the reason that I was able to thoughtfully decide to end the medical intervention and go through this chapter of my story the way that I have. And I don't resent anyone and I have several girlfriends right now who are deep in the throes of their own fertility, freezing eggs and doing IVF and doing the things that are right for them right now. And I respect all of it. And I'm very, very content with my choice. And I'm very comfortable not explaining my decision, but supporting my decision to those who question, aren't you worried that you're going to die alone and nobody's going to come to your funeral? And who's going to come and visit you in the home? And who's going to,
God,
right? It's a lot. But the expectations, not just that we have of others in the world, but that we put on our children are also really intense. And so we'll see, we'll see how it all works out. But at this stage of the game and of my life, this is the right decision for me.
I just have to say it's a really evolved way of thinking about things too, because it's such like an emotionally charged subject. And to your point, it's so personal. And I too have friends that have gone through the IVF journey and infertility. And I've gotten to kind of sit on the sidelines as someone who's been pregnant, didn't have problems getting pregnant. And I just see how much goes into that.
Yeah.
And then also I'm seeing the flip side where you're at, where I'm seeing more and more women embrace that I don't think being a mother is for me. And
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that I have a good mix of friends where no, I'm lying. Most of my friends are married with kids. I had breakfast with one of my closest friends yesterday that she actually told me, she's like, you talk about me so much on the podcast that you probably should just have me on. I'm like, wow, that's really good self-promotion. But all she ever wanted to be in her life was a wife and mom.
Yeah.
And she kills it every day as a mom. But at the same time, she's like, I'm exhausted. But then on the flip side, she also says, we were talking, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go see Janet Jackson. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. She's like, I'm so jealous of your life. And I'm like, you can come. But she picked the path that was right for her. I've picked the path that's right for me. You're picking the path that's right for you. Lauren is picking the path that's right for her. And to Lauren's point, there's a lot more women doing it. And it's almost, we're literally going against societal norms of what is expected for us as women, you know? Yep. And my cousin's the same way. My cousin is 40, lives down in Southern California, travels a lot for her job. And she's just like, yeah, I think people equate, like, if you don't want kids, you don't like kids. I love children.
Yeah.
I mentor kids. I am a big kid myself. I just don't want my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if I can expound on that a little bit, when we talk about these societal norms and the phrasing that I mentioned earlier, this, you'll be a great mom someday. Yeah. I would be a great mom. Yeah. Like, I'm resourceful and I'm loving and I'm like, I would be a great mom. I would be an exhausted mom. And as a party of one, I struggle with sometimes really difficult anxiety. I don't know how I would do it if there were more humans that I was like responsible. I don't. And you know what the answer is? Society says you figure it out. You do it. You figure it out. You do, and you burn out, right? And then your relationship suffers. And the relationship, my mom, I want my mom to come on my own podcast, and I haven't officially asked her yet. So here I'm putting it out in the universe. But she raised me ahead of her time in the sense that she treated her relationship with herself and her relationship with my dad as a priority, not even equal. And I'm not explaining this right. I felt loved and cared for as a child, but I knew that she was committed to her relationship with my dad and herself. And so those things were prioritized as well. I see a lot of the expectation that we put on women. Again, I'm not a mom. I don't hang out in these Facebook groups specifically, but this whole super mom, like everything's got to be perfect and Pinterest worthy and bento box lunches and the perfect this and the perfect that. Could I do that? I could, but I don't know that I would be available then emotionally the way that I am available now for the people that I nurture in a different way, if that makes sense. And for my energy level and the way that I show up at my best, and it's been a lifetime of learning what that is. It wouldn't be in that context. And that's a really, we don't learn that in many cases until, I won't say too late, but until much later in our lives. And I think I would have rushed through motherhood and not really probably been the kind of mother that I would have wanted to be had it happened. So
yeah, that's fair. I mean, motherhood is not a cliche when people say it's the hardest job there is.
Yeah,
it is. And if you're a working mom on top of that, I mean, it all looks really good on the surface. And I feel like we were just talking about being on the socials before we started this podcast and watching everyone's like highlight reel is what I like to call it, making it look so easy when we all know it's anything but easy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look that pretty.
No. And I think the important lesson for all of us, like regardless, childless by choice, partnered with kids. I mean, all of those, they're not equal. Like, this is not apples to apples. These are not equal comparisons. And I think I find myself editing a lot of what I say because I know my situation as a single non-partnered woman with no obligation to any single person in the world gives me a huge amount of freedom and a huge amount of flexibility in my decision making that not everybody has. And so I try to remember when I'm talking with a woman who's feeling like she's in career transition, because that's what happens when you're a woman who's transitioned in your career. People call you and say, I'm so curious what you're doing. How did you do it?
Mm-hmm.
And then she shares with me that she's got 2 kids that are in high school and they live in an affluent suburb of Atlanta, and she's paying, college private school tuition, and college is on the horizon. And it's a different conversation. It's a different decision for her to make about taking some of these chances. And so I have to be thoughtful that when you really are a one-woman show in every sense of the word, it's a different perspective than if I had all of these other people that were really leaning on me.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
But this is my truth, right? This is the moment in time that I have arrived in, and I certainly don't sit at home feeling guilty because I'm doing things that, it's a weird thing to say out loud. I don't feel guilty. I'm aware, right, that while my girlfriends are wrangling little kids and summer school and schedules and all of that, yes, I sleep in on Saturdays because I can, right? Like because there's nobody asking me to make them breakfast. And those are the cards that I've been dealt. So, it's an interesting moment in time for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you played those cards well for yourself, but like you said, it's personal. It's your decision. And I feel like society, there's so many norms and cultural conditioning working against all of us, especially as women. But it's like you either kind of are cut from the cloth where it's like you're trying to check all the boxes, the proverbial boxes of like, this is what a good life looks like. This is what I'm supposed to do. And then at some point, I think as we get older, and you kind of alluded to this, maybe even before we started to record, was you hit your 30s and you kind of go, was this really like the direction I wanted to go in my life? And you start kind of, I don't want to say second guessing, but looking back, I did a lot of reflection myself. I'm like, was that a really intentional choice? And what I hear from you is so much intention behind the choice. And I think that comes with more experience of like, I'm choosing this. I'm not just trying to check the box.
Yeah.
Yeah. Realize that for yourself.
Yes. And I'll go a little deeper and say intention, but also trust in myself, which has been the biggest. And I'm still learning this. I still struggle with this. And thank goodness for those that I have on speed dial that I can reach out to when I have moments of doubt and panic. But it's really, yes, it's letting go of those societal norms. And those boxes were all checked by the time I was 25. I mean, I was on my way. And in my late 30s, really around the time 6 years ago, I left my last corporate role, took a year off, and really recovered from classic burnout, but also this like, whose life am I living?
Yeah.
And who wrote the list that has the boxes that I'm checking, and what say do I have in this? Am I allowed to rewrite that list? And so started asking some questions of myself, of those around me, really taking stock of, what sounds very like, rah, get out your beads and crystals, but like, what do I want my life to mean? And what meaning and purpose do I want to assign to it? And realize that a lot of the things on that list, though had served me very well up to that point, were not really things that were aligned with me and who I was. They really reflected other people and other influence that I had in my life at that time. And so the only way that I could change the list was to trust myself enough that if I changed the list, it was going to be okay. And I see so many women that are on the brink of transition and are scared to death to take the first step. And I get it. But confidence in yourself is a muscle that the more we use it, I won't say the easier it becomes, the more familiar it becomes. So that feeling in your belly, like you're making the biggest mistake of your life, it never, ever, ever goes away. I just know now how to address it, how to recognize it, and what to do with it once I feel it. And so that gut instinct, I think, there's so much there. And I think we know that as women, but we've, again, been conditioned to ignore it because all of the very practical thought that might contradict that gut instinct is telling us to go a different path. And yes, it comes with age and wisdom and experience and repetition. All of that is true. And I wish that we could speed this up for other women. And maybe that's why we have conversations like this on a podcast, is that if there's a 25-year-old woman listening saying, I don't know if I want to have kids, and maybe hearing our stories and our reflections here will give her that permission that she's waiting for, to say, you don't have to do it that way. Even though at 25, it's highly likely all your friends are getting married. In 5 more years, they'll all be having babies. I mean, I went through this when I got married. There were like 9 weddings in 2 years in my friend group. And this is societally a lot of what happens. And statistically, a lot of those will end in divorce. And like, that's where we are. And so I think we fall into some of those, they're not traps, but we fall into some of those decisions. And I like the idea that we're bringing in different decisions to the conversation, that you have a different choice, and that being quote unquote childless in your 40s is not something, it can be something to be sad about. I don't want to dismiss or diminish those who have wanted and longed for motherhood and did not find it, but it can also be something to celebrate. And unlike your friend group, Corey, most of my friends are single women. And so,
oh my God, can I hang out with your friend group?
right? No, because I need them all to myself. But next week I'll be in Florida. We're doing our annual girls trip for a charity music festival. And some of them are married and do have children, but the vast majority of us are post 45 and single. And we have really supported one another, no matter the life choices that you make. But really it's given me this sense of old age, whatever that even means, doesn't have to be alone drooling on myself in a retirement community, right? Like, it can look different. And I'm affirmed every day that I'll have the support that I need and want when the time comes. So
yeah, my there was a woman I met in a group coaching atmosphere, and she's divorced. She does have children, but she is mid to upper 50s. And she went out and bought a whole RV and just got in the car and just went. And she's like, and to your point, she's like, I'm not going to sit in my kitchen or in my family room or in my garden by myself, just staring at whatever, thinking about what I should have done or I could have done or I would have done. She goes, I'm just going to go do all those shoulda, coulda, wouldas, And she goes, you only get this one life, and in terms of support, like my cousin and I, we're like, no, what we say first about not having kids, I'm like, that looks like it hurts. And I'm not, I don't like pain. So no to all of that. But also my stepmom said it about me probably 15 years ago. And at first I was offended at what she said, but then I'm like, no, you pretty much got that spot on. She's like, you're too selfish to have a child. And I just looked at her like, well, I think that's kind of rude. But then my dad was like, no, you are. He's like, you like your me time, you like your purses, you like your shoes, you like this, you like that. And my stepmom went on to say, she goes, I think that if there was a sale at Macy's on heels, but your kid needed Pampers, you would have to stop and think. And I said, yeah, you're actually right. And that doesn't mean that I don't like kiddos, but it's just, I'm really selfish with my time. I'm really selfish.
Sure. So I kind of like take a little bit of offense to that on your behalf, because I don't, the word selfish doesn't feel right to me because it has such a negative connotation. And I think that we can be motherly in ways in society, in our communities, in our networks of friends and family without having birthed.
Oh, I agree with that 100%.
Right. And so I would argue, I don't know that selfish is the word. I don't know the right word, but selfish doesn't feel, I don't feel selfish when I'm, and again, it's really loaded for me because the antidote to not being partnered and raising children and sort of living the dream is when you take risks like we have taken. For me to leave a traditional corporate job, there was no partner with health insurance that I could hop onto. There was no six-figure salary that he was bringing in to cover the rough first few years and to make sure that I could still go on vacation. And I'm not, it's not either or, right? It's great if you have that support, and I'm not diminishing that, nor am I saying success is sweeter because I worked, I had to scrape, and it's just different. And so like to say that I'm selfish because I didn't, and you are not saying that, but if one did use that language in that context, it's just different. I made a different choice. And I don't know that those who have children are selfless. Is that what that means? Is that if you, because sometimes
I'm not really sure. I think she looked at it in terms of, I can't go do this for me. I can't buy this for me because I need to buy this. In terms of being motherly, I'm the fun auntie. I'm the cool mentor. I'm the cool. I was the cool vacation Bible school teacher. I'm the aunt that'll let my 9 and 6-year-old niece eat Rocky Road ice cream for breakfast from the container while watching food truck road race while in their pajamas at 2:00 until 2:00 in the afternoon. So I appreciate that balance. But I agree with what you're saying. I don't know if selfish is the right word. It's just different, but no, we're not all cut from the exact same cloth, different strokes for different folks.
No, it's okay. When did we get to the space where we feel like we have to judge everyone else in their decisions?
Yeah. I remember when somebody asked me, like, you don't have kids? And I was like, no. And it was like, there was like this look like, was it hard to get
pregnant? Bless your heart, Corey.
Bless your heart. It's like, was it hard? I'm like, was what hard?
I'll tell you, when you tell them that you tried, and I don't mean to make light of, infertility categorically, but when someone would ask me if I wanted to have kids, and my response is I tried and wasn't able to, that shuts them up real quick, because that's a whole different
road. Yeah.
Well, they're like, there's pain there.
Yeah, we all assume that women are just walking around, and we're told that, right? We're told. It's so fascinating to me. I was told as a very young girl, is this TMI? If it's TMI, tell me, but edit it out. But I've never had a regular cycle. I've always been all over the map. And one of my very first gynecologists told me, like, it's likely when you try to get pregnant, you might struggle. And so I kind of knew going into this that I might have some strikes against me. And that's, you need to ovulate at a certain time in the month, and that's when fertilization happens. And if you don't know when that's happening, it makes it harder to get all that timing right. So then flash forward, my gynecologist, when I was going through my infertility treatments, is still my gynecologist today. And he's going to retire soon, and I'm going to have big feelings about that. But I remember after my ex-husband and I separated, I went in for my annual exam, and he said, do you want to go on birth control? And I said, no, like, why would I bother? And he said, because don't be surprised if you do get pregnant now, because biology is so unpredictable, and and that's the mystery of it, and the frustration of it, and the devastation of it, is that you just don't know what your body's going to do when you want it to do it. And so in a sense, my fertility has always been a bit of a wild card. And so as soon as you tell someone a bit of that, you show them that scar, wow, does it change the reaction? And I don't do it in a way to diminish what I experienced or to make them feel bad, but we do need to continue to recognize that for some women who are childless, it is not a choice. It is not a selfish decision, right? And I have many girlfriends who are now reaching the end of their fertility, who are singled, but still desperately want to be a mother. And so they're navigating motherhood as a single woman and the possibilities that way. And so we make a lot of assumptions as humans about, obviously, like, thank you, Captain Obvious, for based on what we see. And but this is one, you cannot look at a woman and tell if she has fertility issues or not. You cannot see how many miscarriages she's had or you just cannot see these things. And so the sensitivity and the delicacy and the grace that we give a woman, I think, is just it's so critical when we have conversations like this. And for goodness sake, could we just stop asking women when they're going to have kids? Could we just stop? What difference does it make?
When they're going
Like,
to have kids, when
literally.
they're going to get married, all of the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah,
It's
my
the
grandma.
constant.
Yeah,
I was on a panel discussion last week for a group of college students, and we were talking about career path. And it starts when you're in junior high. What do you want to do when you grow up? It starts when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And then you're in high school. Where are you going to go to college? Go to college. Where are you going to work? What are you going to do? And it's this constant need to know. And we think we're just being cordial and we're making conversation. What we're doing is we're applying pressure and we're setting expectations.
That stuff sticks with
with you.
them.
Yep.
It does. I remember I had to speak a couple months ago for Black History Month. The college I went to, the Black Student Alumni Association, we have this thing called Super Sunday, where we go to area African-American churches and speak to the youth about college. In short, it's a pretty sugar-coated sales pitch for them to go to that school. And it was very heavily stressed on telling them, you have to go to school. You have to go to college. You have to do this. And I just said, I just want to let you know right now, I'm not going to have that conversation. I'm going to ask them, do you want to go to college? How many of you want to go to college? It's totally okay if you don't. It's okay if you go when you're 26. If you don't want to do it right now, just if you want to do something, go figure out how to be the best at it. Go and make sure that you're doing something that feeds your soul. Forget whatever society told you or whatever. Do you? You know?
And also you don't have to do it forever.
Yeah.
Like the pressure that we put on ourselves to have the answer and the final answer at all of these different stages in our life. Wow. And especially with career stuff, right? That's a whole other tangent. But I mean, yes, I've made my way through the insurance industry for now 24 years, but I've tried to leave many, many times. I've daydreamt about doing a million other things. I mean, it's taken a lot of twists and turns and then finally doing my own thing to find my place in the industry. And that's just one example of that. And I'm not impractical, right? We need to be thoughtful about the future and our finances and all of that. But life shows us all the time how fleeting it is.
Yes.
And living a life for someone else or someone else's expectations is something that I have done. And since I have, again, trusted myself to start really making the decisions that are right for me and right for me in that moment, and that's really what my nomad lifestyle is a nod to, is not living 10 years in the future, but really living, I know where I'm going to be until September 1st. And I don't know yet beyond that where I'm going to be, but I trust myself that I'm going to figure it out. And that's been a very powerful learning for me along the way. And obviously some things you need to be thinking about proactively. But in general, I think a lot of these decisions come with so much pressure and so much weight unnecessarily.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in to part 1 of this conversation. We appreciate our listeners more than you could ever know. Stay tuned for part 2 coming soon. In the meantime, if you liked any part of what you heard, please, please, please do us a favor and follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're willing to go a step further, we would love for you to leave us a review and send this episode to a friend that you feel would be served by it in any way. We are so excited to finally share more about Catalyst, the community we are building in conjunction with this podcast. Our mission with Catalyst is to create an authentic, safe, and inclusive space for heart-centered, growth-minded, multi-passionate women to navigate their life's transitions, all by building meaningful relationships, learning from one another, and growing into the best version of themselves, and maybe even making the world a little bit better in the process. If you're interested in becoming a founding member of Catalyst, we would love to learn more about you and have you apply at wearecatalyst.social. Check it in the show notes. We only have a limited number of spots for this founding member round, so be sure to get your application in soon. Again, the website to apply is wearecatalyst.social. We look forward to the possibility of getting to know you on a deeper level and supporting you in navigating your life's transitions. We cannot wait to have you join us for the next episode. Until then, we encourage you to lean into your community and embrace the growth that inevitably happens when you're in transition. See you next week.